A dozen of young, successful agri-entrepreneurs and facilitators of youth in agriculture programs from the Pacific, from the Caribbean and from the African continent were invited to participate to a half-day workshop which took place at the Room D of the Port-Vila Convention Center on Tuesday, 17 October 2017, day 2 of the first ever Pacific Week of Agriculture 2017 held in Port-Vila-Vanuatu from 16th to 20th October 2017. The concept of the side event, organized and funded by the Technical Centre for Agricultural and Rural Development, CTA, based in Netherlands in Europe, is to bring together successful youth agri-entrepreneurs from the ACP countries in one spot and to give them the opportunity to share their success stories, their experience, as well as their challenges with one another and to learn from one another. For that matter, a dozen of successful agripreneurs and facilitators of youth in agriculture programs from the Pacific region were invited and were present at the workshop, as well as 3 promising young entrepreneurs from the African continent and from the Caribbean. They were specially invited to come and share their success stories to their Pacific counterparts. The half-day event was divided into 2 parts. The first one with the panel 1, comprised of all the youth agri-entrepreneurs who were given 10 minutes each to present their success stories to the policymakers, such as the Vanuatu Minister for Agriculture and other government officials from the Pacific region present at the workshop, as well as representatives of financiers and development partners such as the Technical Centre for Agricultural and Rural Development, CTA, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, the National Bank of Vanuatu, NBV, the Pacific Community, SPC, the Vanuatu National Youth Council, the Pacific Islands Private Sector Organization, PIPSO, and representatives of other NGOs and youth enablers. One of the speakers of the panel 1, Fou Feafaaki, the owner of Lupe Niue from Niue, talked about how a decision to quit a full-time job as a nurse in a rest home to venture into agribusiness has paid off. She actually took over her mother's market stall and small banana chips processing when she was sick, and she managed to scale it up and turn it into a full-time profitable business. Inima Charles, a young female facilitator of the Youth at Work program in the Solomon Islands, talked about the challenges of youth regarding agriculture as being a dirty job, and how the Youth at Work project, through its community training and finance literacy program, is contributing slowly in changing the mindset of the youth and to stimulate more and more young people to set up their own piggery, poultry and prawn farms. In his presentation, David Thomas from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean shared his story about how he decided to quit his job at a bank in 2009 and to venture full-time into agriculture by setting up his online shopping business of local agricultural produce called D Market Movers. He explained that he first met some resistance because people in the Caribbean were not accustomed to order their produce online, but through persistence they managed to initiate and get more Caribbean people to trust their services by buying quality local agricultural produce online. The Market Movers is today a profitable business and has ever since more than 500,000 visitors in their websites and over 2,000 steady customers.
We usually start with...
Elvis Uma's success story from Kenya is about a young passionate ICT kid from a village who always believed that ICT could solve any problem in life. His last innovation that turned out to be a huge success was to create a mobile phone application targeting the 1.8 million small livestock keepers in Kenya who have been struggling in the past to regularly acquire fodder or feed for their cattle. Today, the mobile app called M-Fodder has made the life of small livestock keepers in Kenya much more easier. All they have to do is to order and to pay for their fodder via that mobile app, and the item is delivered to their farm. Elvis Uma has also mentioned that Kenya has become today the Silicon Valley of Africa in terms of ICT due to the fact that the government policymakers and all the other players in the value chain, including the financiers, the private sector, including the educational and training system, have been collaborating together to ensure that there is an enabling environment and also incubators for innovations, financial mechanism to fund youth innovations in every development sectors. The second part of the workshop consisted of a second panel comprised of representatives of policymakers, financiers, development partners, private sector and youth in agriculture enablers who shared one after the other their reactions about the success stories that were presented earlier by the Youth Agri-Entrepreneurs. The overall reactions from the members of the second panel were very positive. They all praised the young agri-entrepreneurs for their passion, their energy and creative innovations. The director of the Technical Centre for Agricultural and Rural Cooperation, CTA, Michael Hailu.
I think from panel one we had a lot of success stories. I think the question is how do we scale them up and how do we make them even much bigger than what we have now.
The important thing that was coming out of the presentations this morning was that the different entrepreneurs they saw a need, and they came up with the innovation to try and address that, but in a cool kind of way, in something that fits the current climate of ICT. So that was really impressive to hear the different things that are happening.
So our key recommendations. And
4 or 5 recommendations transpired from the Youth Entrepreneurship workshop. The need for creating an enabling environment was emphasized by the Youth Agri-Entrepreneurs in their presentation and was also reinforced by the high-level policy panelists. But they went further to agree and made the first recommendation that there is a need for specific programs and development for youth in agriculture, youth in agri-entrepreneurship, and making linkages. The second recommendation is that there is a need to consider policy shifts to change the market conditions, to build alliances across government ministries and agencies, and also across partners. They also convened that there is a need for the Ministry of Agriculture to talk with all the stakeholders. The youth need support of bottom-up youth-driven policies, planning, development, and implementation. Another recommendation that came out and that needs to be actionable is the whole issue of increasing access to finance. They've talked about innovative funding mechanism, and some of the things that came out were small loans, seed funding, grants, equity grants, Youth Enterprise Development Fund, and incubators for innovation. They all agreed that some of those issues are doable and that they are already implemented in some countries, for instance, in Kenya. The fourth recommendation is about increasing access to support services. Both of the two panels raised the importance of building strategic linkages, and one of the important and interesting points that came out was the idea of a Youth Agribusiness Academy that was mentioned by Noshin Ozanelli in her presentation. The question is, how do we link successful youths to other successful youths and more youths to youths so that we all learn from the youths and the youths learn from each other? And that brought then the participants to the issue of the ICT-enabled youth agri-entrepreneurship. They talked about investing in education, training and skills development, and what came out was the need for building capacity in finance, business, ICT skills across the board.
And last but not least, we talked about partnerships.
The fifth and last recommendation was about the importance of partnerships. They emphasized on the fact that it has to be a partnership between government, development partners, financiers, and especially the youths themselves if they want to succeed. The half-day workshop was organized and funded by the Technical Centre for Agricultural and Rural Cooperation, CTA, in collaboration with the Vanuatu government.